Concealed in tropical jungles and buried in arcane texts lie mysterious clues to man's forgotten military genius. Is it possible that the ancients discovered the basic technologies that produced one of today's ultimate fighting machines, the battle tank, hundreds or possibly thousands of years ago? Bulletproof armor invented for a war that killed a king and tore a nation apart. 5-ton armored beasts that crushed whole armies with fear and firepower. Armor-plated shock troops that smashed through enemy ranks. And strange, forgotten weapons that, like the tank, altered the balance of power on the battlefield and repulsed whatever the enemy could throw at them. Unlocking the secrets of ancient tank tech is our ancient discovery. The tank is built for aggressive attack, extreme mobility, and resolute defense. A frontline weapon in conventional warfare, it's considered a modern invention. But evidence recovered from the ancient world suggests that man has always strived to create weapons with the tank's basic attributes.
While the tank was invented in the 20th century, the ideas behind the tank, mobility, protection, and firepower, go back to the beginnings of organized warfare.
In India, in the 17th century, a weapons system that combined firepower with mobility caused havoc on the field of battle. The elephant, weighing 5 tons and capable of moving over rough terrain at 20 miles per hour, was conscripted for active service. It was mounted with a platform carrying heavy cannon, fired by specialist gunners.
The ancients understood what a tank was long before they had the ability to make anything that we would recognize as a tank.
Today, tanks combine tremendous mobility with the destructive capability of 125mm guns mounted in rotating turrets. But is it possible that the ancients used the same principles and technologies on the lost battlefields of history?
Throughout history, we get lots of stories about elephants and their use. But in a document from 1616, we get a really, really exciting, intriguing eyewitness account of elephants being used in an unusual way.
In 1616, a British traveller called Edward Terry reported seeing Indian war elephants armed with heavy guns, 6 foot long, and mounted on wooden frames.
He states that Akbar, the Mughal king, was using cannon on elephant back. That turns an elephant from a mobile fighting platform and a beast of war, much as a stallion or a battle charger might be, to an animal-powered equivalent to the battle tank.
There is some evidence that elephants were used in battle in India as long ago as 1100 BC. Initially, their chief function was to give commanders a better view of what was happening on the field.
This is where the Indian kings would have stood in battle. They would have been up on top of the elephant, surveying the battlefield, commanding the position, flying their flags. This is a very powerful way of presenting yourself on the battlefield.
Commanders soon realized that elephants could also be used in the front line. Massed in hundreds, they charged down on the enemy. The air was filled with dust and the deafening sound of their trumpeting. The ground trembling beneath their feet, elephants were a truly terrifying sight.
The elephants themselves were trained to pick up horses and riders in their trunks and dash them to the ground, to their ruin. They also had their tusks sawn off and fitted with tusk swords, and one such looks like this. This fits on the sawn-off end of the tusk, so that instead of the natural end of the tusk, you have this double-curved blade with a huge, fat, armour-piercing point at the end, which would make a fearsome square wound in anything it hit.
Their function on the battlefield was to smash through the enemy general's lines and wreak havoc on his order of battle.
They will break the enemy's formation. They will cause chaos in the enemy's front ranks. They will give you an opportunity to cross the ground, to attack the enemy hand-to-hand on your terms.
Sometimes elephants carried archers. Such specialist bowmen required years of practice, not to mention a fine sense of balance. But the discovery of gunpowder changed the strategy and tactics of elephant warfare. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, the Indian subcontinent was dominated by one of the greatest states in history, the Mughal Empire, ruled by the Emperor Akbar.
Akbar was the third of a highly successful series of Mughal rulers of India. He was around in the 16th century. He was known as a great military innovator. He was driving for technological advantage over his enemies in an effort to hold sway over the vast part of the Indian subcontinent.
The British traveller to India, Edward Terry, is specific about the weapon he saw on the elephant's back.
This is a conjectural reconstruction of what Terry describes. First, he uses the word gun.
Mounting a cannon on its back would transform the way an elephant was used in combat. Each animal would become a mobile artillery unit. The gunner would have a 6-foot height advantage, giving him enhanced range and visibility. Experimental archaeologist John Naylor has arrived in the jungles of Southeast Asia to investigate the advantages and disadvantages of this ancient tank. But before mounting a weapon on the beast, there were other problems to be solved. John is investigating each one in turn. The first problem was weight. At the time, heavy cast bronze cannon were in general use. The elephant cannon demanded iron, which was 20% lighter than bronze.
This is much lighter than a bronze or brass piece, coming in at about 400 pounds.
The second problem was the difficulty of reloading. Most guns in the 17th century were muzzle loaders. The gunner had to walk round to the front and shove the powder, wadding and missile down the front of the barrel.
Obviously, if you're balanced on an elephant, you can't walk round to the front to ram the charge home and load it.
Cannon forged of iron and not cast in bronze can be constructed with a rear opening called the breech. The missile and the gunpowder are packed into a separate cylinder, effectively a giant bullet. This is slotted into the breech, which means you can load the cannon from the back rather than the front. The final problem to be solved before mounting the gun is to work out how to aim it. Elephants can't turn on a sixpence, so to be effective, the gunner would have to aim the gun without changing the direction of the elephant, exactly like the revolving turret on a modern tank.
The key to how you aim these is in the swivel and the pintle. Just by having it being able to turn left to right, to pan, and to tilt on this point of balance means you've got lots of flexibility in aiming.
But to find out how to aim the elephant cannon in practice, John must mount up. From his lofty position as an ancient elephant gunner, John now appreciates the tactical advantage of this ancient tank.
The first thing that's amazing about this is the field of view. I can see for hundreds of yards all around. So for a commander, this is excellent as a command point to actually see the whole layout of the battlefield. This is an awesome weapons platform.
To test the targeting accuracy, John has modified his replica cannon to fire paintball rounds. Real explosives and real iron cannonballs cannot be used, in case they endanger the elephant or John himself. Practice targets have been laid in a clearing on the edge of the jungle, exactly the same terrain that the commanders of old preferred.
Here we go. Yes, that's dead. It's a real learning curve. It's working out the movement of the elephant, the movement of the gun, and the movement of the target in relation to both.
John has discovered the knack of the ancient aiming technique.
I ended up more like a naval gunner, learning to wait for the point where the gait of the elephant is in line with the target. As a weapon system, I think we've shown that it would have worked, especially against packed infantry. You add in bows and other weapons in there, grenades and all the rest of it, armour everybody up. This thing would have been devastating.
Over the centuries, weapons became more powerful, armour became more sophisticated, and elephants themselves developed through selective breeding and training. Nevertheless, elephants survived for over 1,000 years as the frontline war engine of many imperial armies. But it was not only animals that laid the foundations for today's tank tech. Throughout history, sieges have been a forging ground of military innovation. Ancient Discoveries investigates an armored fighting machine that battered a nation into submission. The capacity of a tank to smash through obstacles on the battlefield and defensive walls is essential to its effectiveness. This capability was also at the heart of the tank equivalents of the ancient world, siege engines. These varied from 300-foot-high armor-plated siege towers to trebuchets that could fire flaming missiles over 1,000 feet.
Siege technology is a very advanced, sophisticated thing in the ancient world because of the inherent difficulties of breaking into defended places.
In the 2nd century AD, the Roman Emperor Trajan led a campaign against the Dacians, a tribe that lived on the northern frontier of the empire.
Trajan was a new emperor wanting to make his mark. The way you did that as a Roman emperor was by winning military glory. Under the previous emperor, Rome had suffered a series of defeats at the hand of the Dacians, and they'd become almost a traditional enemy.
The war is chronicled on Trajan's Column, which still stands in Rome today. The relief sculptures on the pillar depict versions of a simple yet cruelly effective siege weapon, the battering ram.
It's so simple. It's what the police use if they want to bash down your door. They batter it down. And you want to attack a castle, well, you need to bash the walls down or bash the gate down.
The largest battering rams weighed perhaps 3 tons. They were normally hung on ropes from the roof of a wheeled wooden frame. Teams of soldiers used muscle power to swing the ram back and forth, gradually building up enough momentum to smash through wall or gate. To protect the soldiers from arrows or stones dropped from ramparts, the solid oak frame was covered in wood and animal hides. The problem was, wood and animal hides are flammable. Defenders could pour burning oil onto the ram's protective covering, burning the shelter and incinerating the men beneath. The attacking engineers came up with an ingenious solution: chemical fire retardant.
The material that was used was alum, and this was used to prevent wood burning.
Alum is a naturally occurring rock.
It's a mineral which contains aluminium, and this is a particular rock here from which alum can be extracted. This is alunite.
Chemist Nicholas Norman is using alum to cook up some ancient fire retardant.
The way in which they would have extracted alum would be to heat this up for long periods of time in air and to keep it moist as well. And the physical effect of that is to turn the rock into a powder, and that dissolves in water. That could therefore be painted on things like wood.
Alum works by cooling the fire chemically.
A reaction takes place which actually takes heat in, an endothermic process. And the effect of that is to take the heat out of the fire, in a similar way to water does.
Ancient model maker Richard Windley has been reading the texts. He wants to know whether or not alum really works.
What we want to try and do is to do an experiment using alum, and we're going to soak hessian or canvas in an alum solution, and then once that's dry, what we're going to try and do is to set fire to a piece of the untreated material and the treated material and see what the differences are.
The canvas on the left is treated with the alum fire retardant. That on the right is untreated. Using a replica historic flamethrower, Richard puts the chemical to the test.
Hopefully we'll be able to see that the alum-soaked canvas is fire retardant, if not fireproof, and we expect the other canvas to char and burn.
Richard's flamethrower uses a combination of sulfur and charcoal to produce flames heated to 1,000 degrees.
It's just starting to burn. It's not burning very fiercely, but we are getting a definite burn there. It took about 1 minute 25 seconds to get that burning. It's not burning that brilliantly even now, but it's definitely been damaged.
How will the untreated canvas compare?
That one seemed a lot quicker. We got that one burning in about 27 seconds, and it's actually burning away, so it's fairly evident that this is the actual natural canvas.
Fireproofing using alum worked better than anyone expected.
It's several minutes now since we applied the flame to the